Hi, welcome to K&K Dig Food. This is Kalyan Karmakar. You're
Hi,
supposed to
this
say
is
who you
Kurush
are.
Dalal. And okay, again,
No, that is good enough.
so this is Kurush Dalal, and we're doing K&K Dig Food. And a very, very warm welcome to episode 2, which we weren't very sure would happen because we're both incredibly lazy bums.
but there's some critical reasons why episode 2 has happened because of the stupendous response from people saying that we want an episode 2.
Yes.
Strongest among them was Kurush and my mother-in-law. And while they haven't been seen in the same photograph, rumors that they are the same is not true. And so that there's no discord at home. Even my mom watched it and liked it. But jokes apart, thanks a lot for all the positive response. It's a show where Kurush and I are co-anchors, and we talk about food, and there's a lot of banter. And
And
people
also,
say that
one
they
of the
learned
main
stuff out of
reasons,
it.
Kalyan,
Yeah,
for today's show is because there was a mistake in the last show.
what was
So,
the
you were
mistake?
talking about the hamor, and I was talking about Caspian
Ah,
whitefish.
yes,
Caspian whitefish is the kutum.
Khutum. But you said that it's not Hamor. I mean, the name
And I
is
couldn't remember what it was, so I had to correct
ah
that. So it's definitely a
Khutum.
good reason. I should make a mistake every episode so I
Yeah,
can correct myself on the next episode.
yeah, and if people pick up the episode mistake and troll us, then
Yeah,
okay,
because
Kurush, last time when you were starting, you wanted to start the episode by talking about your grandmom and Bandra. So do you want to? I mean, that time I cut you off. So do you want to tell us about that?
so I wanted to talk about my grandmother because I spent a lot of time at her place. I spent most of my vacations there, and there are so many things about her and her way of life, which during COVID I have kind of stood up and realized that if COVID had happened during her time, she would have been way more prepared than we are.
Hmm.
Simple things like all her masalas were ground once a year in March. And then she had masalas for a little more than a year. Her ghee came once a year. She wrote a postcard to Belgaum, and she got a beautiful 15 kg tin of ghee from Belgaum. She similarly wrote a postcard to Madhi, and from Madhi in two reused oil dabbas, the 15 kg metal cans. She would get oiled tur dal, which is very famous from there, and that would be her stock for the year, and stuff like that. So she was always ready, and she pickled things, and she made murabbas, and there was always enough in the house so that if for some reason for a month or so you couldn't go to the market, you were good. There were lots of dal and kardhanya in the house, or kathor as we call it. So all of these things were stockpiled and kept. Oil was always bought in large quantities. The way we buy today is so different. And meals were simpler, and they were on time. They were manically on time. I mean, I remember 8:30 breakfast meant 8:30 breakfast. If you wanted to sleep late for whatever reason, you could do without breakfast. There would be bread and there would be butter, and you would have to fix yourself a sandwich.
Hmm.
12:30 was lunch. Absolutely bang on. And I honestly think that's a ridiculously early lunch. But if my grandfather was at home, it would be at 12 o'clock lunch. So that, technically it had become afternoon. It was lunchtime. He would have his lunch and leave.
Hmm.
And the house, because of that, ran like a well-oiled machine. Uh, so my mom's side of the family, that's my grandmom and Bandra I talk about, were not very well off. My students find it hilarious when I tell them that my great grandmother was a
In
poor lady,
Bandra.
and she rented a place in Bandra when her
Uh,
husband died, and they came down from Rawalpindi. So, and people say, so what are you saying, sir? Bandra is the most expensive real estate in the city and all that.
hmm.
And I tried to tell her that it's a very different Bandra back then. People in Bandra actually said, we are going to town,
No, but
we're
listen,
going to the city.
even 20 years back, it was the place where 25 years back, people like me from outside, we could afford PGs over here, but now no longer. So, in fact, this town thing, I must tell you, I checked into my PG, which office it arranged. So the first surprise, 97, was that they didn't have a Western loo.
Ooh.
So I looked at the office admin guy and said, like, so he said, no problem, office has a Western loo. You come to office. I said, okay. then I said that, okay, where are the movie halls where English films are shown? Because, back then, like, there would be only two, three movie halls. So he said, that's in Bombay. I said, Bombay? Where am I? Where have I come to? So then I realized that Mahim upwards, where there are no autos, is Bombay.
Bombay.
Yeah.
And it was like that. So, and this other thing about this whole Bombay, Mumbai nonsense, people getting all worked up about it. It was Bombay in English. It was always Mumbai in Marathi and Gujarati.
I mean, this thing. So we used to say Kolkata in Bangla, Calcutta in English. And nowadays, when I write some of my nostalgic posts about Calcutta, which is from the, pre-97 time, I write Calcutta because it was Calcutta.
Yeah, but at least you don't have maniacs getting upset when you use the word Calcutta. Today, the word Bombay gets a lot of people horribly upset. It's not Bombay, it's Mumbai.
No, but I have. Bolo, you tell me.
So my grandmother would always say, Grandpa's going to Mumbai today. I'd be like, yeah, where do we stay? No, we stay in Vandre. So Vandre was the.
Hey, I've started writing Vandre in my Instagram post.
Good. So it was to all the Gujaratis, it was Vandre. And it was Bandora to the Portuguese, and it was the Bandar, which is actually, where our Jama Masjid is. And that was the Bandar of Bandra.
Is that the entry?
Yeah, that's the creek entry. So the Bandra port was there. That's why the area was called Bandar, the Bandargah. And the Portuguese called it Bandora. So hallelujah, Bandra was born.
And there's a Cafe Andorra. I wonder if there's
Cafe Andorra, which has definitely got to do with the little mountain lock kingdom somewhere in Europe, which is a state on its own right somewhere.
I think the signboard painter did a typo and forgot to put the P.
Possible worse things have happened. But Kalyan, Bandra was made up of some 16, 18 villages, depending on who you want to count. I mean, that's just Bandra, just a small suburb. And it's difficult to believe today. But there'd be a village and there'd be like 10 or 12 rice paddies in between, and then we'd be the next village. So Sholi Rajan was one village, Chuim was one village, Vadodara was another village, Vadodara, sorry. Mendora was one village, so on and so forth. So it was a very different place, and there'd be something at tea time in the evenings. That was a very Parsi thing, So it's one of the things I love about being married into a Bengali family. Chai Shange Ta. And the whole Jol Khabar thing, which is all about this. And on my dad's side of the family, I didn't have a grandmother. She died before my parents were married. And her sister lived in Lonavala. And she kept the old Parsi flag flying very high, even higher than my grandmother. So every day there would be something at tea time. And tea time was about 3:30, 3:45. They were retired old couple with their daughter and old gentleman's brother, one of my dad's mamas who lived with them. Sorry, her brother who lived with them, one of my dad's mamas. And she would always have something ready for tea snacks. There would be a date and walnut cake. There would be these little bhakras that we make, which are like deep fried cookies.
The Gujarati bhakras.
There would be the small banana fritters that we make, called karkaria. Once in a while, she would make these very interesting things which are Dutch inspired, Very few people know that the appam patra with the little hemispherical depressions was actually brought to India by the Dutch. It's a profile pan or an evil skewer pan. So, and all over the coast, people use it because they were in contact with the Dutch. It goes all the way to Singapore, Hong Kong. You will find it in Macau. You will find it in Tokyo. The takoyaki that they make is basically
Yeah, so I remember when I had the takoyaki at Osaka, I said, this is apna paniyaram of,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so wait. I at this point, I need to sort of think, the thing is that if you talk with Kurush, it's a bit like, the leg spinner Chandrasekhar, that you never know where the ball's going to land and where it's going to go. But since he's brought onto the subject of snacks, we'll talk about that. If you don't know who Chandrasekhar is and you only know like Ashwin or all of that, then you need to Google that. But you might not also be old enough for this podcast, in which case, please quickly go and get your parents' consent. And last time we had Loaf joining us. Today Nimki is joining us. So Jal Khabar or snacks is what we're going to talk about. And I love the fact that Kurush, you were telling me about your childhood experiences. Now, tell me a bit. So you told me about what was at home, right? What would kids in Bombay or teens and all of that snack on outside of home?
Okay, so
Is it the vada pav?
so genuinely snacking outside was seriously frowned upon, which was one of the main reasons you wanted to do it. You know,
But you're from the 70s, right? I mean, it's not the 1800s or something. Like I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 70s.
no, but
So,
never, that didn't stop parents from doing that, but not eating
uh,
outside. Also,
uh,
cash money was
mm,
difficult to get as a kid,
mm,
unless you had a dadu, a grandfather.
mm,
So my grandfather was the guy who kept me in loose change through
mm,
my early years in school.
mm,
And I don't think my mom or dad ever gave me pocket money till I was in college.
mm,
I started getting pocket money only when I went to college and said, look, dad, I need to have some money on me, type of thing.
mm,
That's a different story for a different day. But
mm.
so my first street food as such was samosa. And right outside the St. Xavier's High School gate, there used to be a samosa-wala would come. He would have this wicker damru like stand and
Yeah.
a large thali with a kapra over it. And he'd come with the thali on his head and the wicker stand under the armpit, put it down, put the thali on it, and he'd be there bang on break time. So we would go to buy samosas.
Is this near Xavier's College? School is near
This
college?
around the corner from Xavier's College, towards Crawford Market.
So the metro area, metro cinema.
So just one building between the corner and school. And he had Punjabi samosas.
So the conical, no, so not the flat ones.
No, but these were flat conical ones.
So like the A1, like the A1 theatre.
Quite like the A1 guys.
So Sindhi Punjabi.
Even flatter than the A1 guys. And they were filled with potato, salt, and a little bit of red chili. There was nothing else in them. And they were served with this orange kaddu sauce. Okay. And they were normally quite warm by the time they came to us. They were never hot. Okay. And they were 15 paise each and 25 paise for two. So what you did was you cut a deal with a friend that today I'll buy two, tomorrow you buy two. Because that entire logic of 15 paise one, but 25 paise for two, matlab 5 paisa bach gaya na. So we got to eat it every day.
Yeah.
And there was this guy called Patla Babu next to him. So Patla Babu, because there was also Mota Babu who was sometimes there and sometimes not there. Mota Babu sold all the most bizarre fruit. He had bear. He would have myrobalan.
Bear is cool in Bengali.
He would have myrobalan, which is your not gooseberry. Kya bolte usko? Awla in season.
Amla.
He would have a kind of imli. Okay. Then he would have cut green mangoes.
I have a theory that the girls used to go more for the pickles than the guys. If you
these were not pickled. These were all raw. And he would put this chili salt powder on it and serve it. So Mota Babu was a seasonal guy. Once in a while, he brought beautiful green anise. Little bundles of green anise stuffed. And you'd buy them and you'd keep picking them and through them through class. And those were yum. And you could get 10 paisa or even 5 paisa if you didn't have much money.
Yes.
And by the way, they were damn good. They would give you udhar. They knew the kids would come back and were good for it. So Patla Babu had a little cupboard-like thingy, like a suitcase, which would open up. So there'd be two sides to it, L-shaped, and it'd be tied to the wall of the school.
Yeah.
The grill of the school. And he had the fancier stuff. Jeera goli and mint sweets and boiled sweets and phantom cigarettes.
Yes.
Cigarettes. Oh God. But the samosa-wala was my go-to man because according to me, that was the filling stuff.
Yeah.
Then there was an ice cream guy who came with this large square cart with 3 tiny wheels, which kind of permanently wobbled over the pavement.
Yes.
And he had this big, deep, cavernous ice cream, stainless steel ice cream thing or metal ice cream thing. And he'd reach in with a flat spoon and he'd give you cones that were this big.
So not quality and all.
Totally local guy. And he would have 2 flavors side by side.
And this is not also the Mewar ice cream
thing. No, this is way before Mewar and all of them.
But I love Mewar ice cream.
So there'd be a green ice cream and there'd be a pink ice cream. And you could have
Pista and strawberry.
yes, they tasted the same. And they tasted neither of pista nor of strawberry. Okay, but you could have green, or you could have pink, or you could have mixed. Okay, so he would quickly scoop it out, put it on this little cone and give it to you. He also had bigger cones. So this was a 10 piece cone, where you got about 1 teaspoon of ice cream in that. There was also a bigger cone for 50 paise, but one never had the courage to put on 50 paise for ice cream. I mean, that was like highway robbery. I had my first vada pav when I was, I think, 9 or 10 years old. 10 years old I was. I joined the Scouts. And I was allowed to take the bus by myself. Okay,
from home.
Yeah, on Sundays. And by the way, in the next year, I was allowed to take the bus every day. But, and I had to fight for half ticket, which was 10 paisa, because I was big and fat. And the conductor refused to believe that I was a half ticket guy.
Yeah.
So, in any case, the first vada pav that I had was with one of my seniors who lived very close to my home. And my grandfather put in a word to him and said, after Scouts, if you are there with him, come back with him. So then what we would do was we would save our bus money and eat something on the way. And we would eat 25 paise vada pavs. So luckily I would be given, so 20 paise was what I should have been given in the morning to catch my bus. But my grandfather would always give me a 50 paise. So I had go by 10 paise and had a 40 paise on the way back home.
Perfect.
And I would have one vada pav for 25 paise, and I would keep my 15 paise change banked against later. I mean,
for the samosa.
Yeah, for the samosa.
So, I mean, that's a maths of a different level.
Totally. 25 paise vada pav, it's so difficult to believe. I mean, I don't believe it today. It's a 15 rupee vada pav.
But the first vada pav I had at 97 must have been about a rupee. So in Bombay, so it didn't inflate that much, like 4 times. But now, if you see 15 into, but 15 is 15 times of 1 rupee, right?
Yeah.
While 1 rupee was 4 times of 25 paisa. So, like, what I'm saying is that I don't know if you're talking of the 70s, and I came in 90s. So that's whatever, almost 30 years.
70s.
So in about 20 years, it went up 4 times. And then in the next 20 years after I came to Bombay, and I have nothing to do with this, guys, the price of vada pav went up by 15 rupees, 15 times. But is it true that the vada pav was not really there earlier? Like batata vadas used to be made, but this vada pav put together by this Ashok.
Number one, the batata vada only happened thanks to the Portuguese. And more thanks to the British.
You often introduce vada pav in your talks as a Portuguese snack.
Completely.
I use that in my food walk. I credit you to it, but
so chilies, the Portuguese brought. Potatoes, the Portuguese brought. Groundnuts to make the chutney, the Portuguese brought. Groundnuts for the oil, the Portuguese brought. The bloody pav, the Portuguese brought with them. The word pav is a Portuguese word for bread. And by the way, guys, if you go to Southeast Asia, the word bao is the same as pav. That's that most of them can't say pav. They say bao instead. So the bao is also thanks to the Portuguese. And the fun part is that vadas started being made quite early, and the British were very proactive about the potato. The British used it to feed their army and to feed themselves, and they loved the potato. So they encouraged it much more than the Portuguese ever did. And the vada was around. And there was this very famous guy called Prakash when I was in college, on the other side of Dadar, in Dadar East. Sorry, in Dadar West. And
that's where my office was, Tulsi Pipe Road, Matripin building.
So, if you're going over the bridge at Dadar and you go down the steps on the left-hand side, opposite Plaza, then you come to Prakash. So Prakash did vadas, and they didn't do vada pavs. So we horrible, nasty boys would go there and ask for a plate of vadas. And then after taking the plate from this old man who used to serve at the counter, we'd say, "Arey, where are the pavs?" And then he hurled the choicest Marathi invectives at you. And we do it just for that, to hear him, because he had such amazing repertoire. And he regularly.
But Prakash, which is at Shivaji Park now, they also don't do pavs, right? They also don't do. They give you the batata vada by itself.
So it's an apocryphal legend, but it's very, very plausible, and there is a lot of other, well, ultimately all of it is hearsay in the food business. But there was this guy called Ashok Vaidya, who had a vada stall at Dadar TT, which was Dadar Station East. And he used to sell vadas over there. And one of the complaints that people had was his vadas were delicious, but they were so hot, they were difficult to hold well.
Yeah. You have to be careful when you put a vada in your mouth.
Yeah. And when you need both your hands to get onto a churchgate fast or a andheri slow or whatever, that vada can be, something that you juggling from hand to hand doesn't happen. So nobody credits the poor guy who was responsible for having the goods. But next to Ashok was a omelette wala. And he sold omelette with bread.
Omelette pav.
So one day in a completely inspired moment, Ashok Vaidya reached out, bummed a ladi of pav of that fellow, put his vada into the pav and said, "Here, now you can hold it."
And I'm pretty sure Ashok Vaidya hadn't seen an Archie's comics where he'd seen the burgers and pop-tates and all that. This is what we did while growing up. Yes.
So, and the vada pav was born. So the fun part of the vada pav being born, is not just the vada pav. Originally, vada was served with mirchi, which was smash fried green chilies on with salt and stuff.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, I still like those guys and only those guys. But
and it's not very tikha.
No.
And it's not very tikha. You can
the popti mirchi that is used. Like green chili. But once the pav came in, the pav can absorb and hold a lot of stuff. So first the dry red chutney came along.
Yeah.
Then now everybody's doing red chutney. What's my USP? So I put in some green chutney.
All that I don't like.
Then there is sweet chutney. Then there is red lasun chutney. So I remember when I was in my 12th. And we were doing this play, a Gujarati play for the Copwood Trophy. We actually won. And every day towards the end, the last 10 days or so, the director would call for vada pavs for the cast because we'd be practicing late into the evening. Okay. And it was a bloody one-act play with 35 of us in it. And I had a triple role. Flash in the pan roles, but I had a triple role and spent most of my time in makeup. But whatever. So those vada pavs came from somewhere in Kalba Devi. They were bigger. So they were, in those days, what was called the 20 paise pav. Not the 10 paise pav that the vada pav guys used. It was a bigger vada. And it had 3 kinds of chutney and dry chutney and green chili segment, which I thought was maximum overload because you couldn't taste the vada.
No, so I always, and guys, this is the one important thing you learn from this episode. If you're having a vada pav in Mumbai, only green chili, at the most the red lasan chutney. Absolutely. And make sure it's a bit cool before you put it in your mouth. And then in Pune, they make fun of the Bombay batata vadas because in Pune, they make it slightly flatter. So they said the whole pav is covered. But anyway, if you smash it, like it comes up.
See, but the fun is smashing a hot vada. Feeling the steam come out of it as you press the pav,
But they don't believe in fun in Pune, do they?
No, they're Puneris. They're very proper about everything. But
okay,
Pune
now
has its Joshi Vadewale, who now, of course, is all over Pune. He's like a rash. And all of us old timers believe that he's not as good. But at one time, Joshi and Bharti, who were next to each other on 2 sides of a building, entrance, we used to drive down long distances. So if somebody was going there, would be told, "Arey, vada pav leke aa," and then they'd immediately be, "Mere ko 2 mangta hai, mere ko 4 mangta hai," and then we'd say, "Chal, paisa nikal."
Now Garden Vada Pav is the sort of flavor of the month.
Garden Vada Pav is big. Joshi Vadewale is all over. Joshi Vadewale's man stood for office. He stood for elections. That's the money they made from selling vadas. So vada pav is a big thing.
Not Murli Manohar Joshi, no?
No. But
he had all these colleges and all that. Murli Manohar Joshi.
Very early on in my, I think this must have been sometime in my 3rd or 4th standard. So I must have been about 7, 8 or 9 years old. Okay. My grandfather used to take me out for a movie every Thursday. Every single Thursday, I was in Xavier, so Thursday was holiday. And my mother didn't know what to do with me in the middle of the week. So my grandfather would take me out for a movie on Thursdays. And New Empire, New Excelsior, Sterling, Strand, Metro, Regal, these were all English movie theaters.
So that's what I meant,
We went to all of these. And they had kids' movies, usually in the morning shows and things like that, So I saw all the Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movies. all the
Ten
westerns.
Commandments.
Yes, yes.
Ten
Ten Commandments came
Commandments.
every 2 years.
Sound of Music.
Ben-Hur every 2 years.
Yes.
Every single summer we saw Hatari with John Wayne in it. I didn't know John Wayne was a cowboy movie star till much later. I thought John Wayne was only famous for his role in Hatari. And that was a really old John Wayne. Okay. And there are fun things like this, They'd have these Zorro festival.
Yes.
So there were some 3 Zorro movies and they would be shown back to back. And they would have what's he's called? 007 festival. I still remember at Strand and stuff like that. So they were great fun. And in those theaters, every theater had a snack it was famous for, but almost every single theater had samosas from A1.
Yes, the A1 samosas.
A1 samosas were sold in every single theater.
Yeah, the Guru Kripa ones.
Oh God, one had to be really, really good. And then one could score samosas. And
the fun of that samosa wasn't the crust, because by the time it would reach you, the aloo would be like khatta and you don't know when it was made. But the crust.
Was yesterday's samosa.
But the crust, the maida crust.
Yeah, that's beautiful maida crust.
Yeah.
And to think of it, it's refugees who made it happen.
The Sindhis of Guru Kripa.
Yeah.
I order it sometimes now from Swiggy. Okay, now I'm going to sort of take us a bit to, and I love the A1 samosas. It's absolutely.
One last thing.
Yes.
But if you went to Sterling,
RTI.
I had the entire RTI range, sandwiches and bigger samosas for the same price. So you had to, it was a dharam sankat. Did you buy a chicken sandwich or did you buy a RTI samosa packet with 2 samosas in it? Now, all the other theaters had really bad vegetable sandwiches, which were terrible, soggy, and no fun. But the chicken samosas at the RTI stall, and it used to be quite a bit of a dharam sankat back in those days.
So when Kainaz and I were dating and we'd go to Sterling, she would have the nutty finger, and she was just in love with that. And I think Asiatic, maybe you would get it. There was an RTI counter, and I would go for the lemon tart. And then we'd go for the samosas. I'm not sure if they were RTI or this thing. And then came in the softies, I think, just before I came to Bombay. And I remember I had my first softie at Regal. The softie
Regal
machine.
Had softies forever.
Forever.
When I was a kid,
I'm talking about 97, 98. Yeah,
and
Regal
sometimes the softie was a little too soft. As in it kind of just sank into your cone. Okay. But Regal was the first place that I knew which had softies.
I think I was watching Face Off.
1 rupee. When I was a kid, and it was a very big thing. 1 rupee investment on a. If you were going under your own steam for a movie, you didn't have any snacks because you couldn't afford them.
Yeah. So now I'll switch a bit. In fact, this bit about 2 of you sharing a samosa. So when I moved into Bombay, and in IMRB, so there was this lady, Mrs. Bhalla or whoever, whose dabbas which we used to subscribe to, and the dabbas are normally, there was enough food for 2. So 2 of us would subscribe to it and maybe call for extra rotis and all that. So, I was thinking of like, food when we were growing up in Calcutta, street food. And I had a bit more exposure to it because my mom was working. So by the time she'd get back from work, college in Howrah, it would be 7, 8 or whatever. So my grandparents would get my brother back from the creche, and I was in afternoon school by then. So I would get back at 4 o'clock and she'd leave me some money to buy a snack. So, when you talk of rolls in Calcutta, first of all, everyone talks of kathi rolls, but if you're from Calcutta, you don't say kathi roll. Though Preetha Sen tells me that in the 60s, when they were in college, then, if they would go to Nizam and all that, they would not even say roll. They would say kathi or kebab, and the kebab would come in rolls, so that was the terminology then. By the time I was sort of growing up, which was in Calcutta in the 80s and 90s, it was rolls like mutton, chicken, egg. Now, there's often this big thing that, Calcutta roll is, different. It's in a kebab and there's no sauce and different from a Frankie and stuff like that. But what people don't realize is that there are 2 very different roll cultures in Calcutta. So one is what you get in central Calcutta, which are the Muslim restaurants, and which is where it initially started. So the biryani places and places like Nizam, where it was said to have been invented, and Zishan and all of that. So where it would be a paratha, it would be mutton from a kebab, nimbu, onion, mirchi, chopped mirchi, and all of that. But
any pudina leaves?
No pudina leaves unless it's a 5-star hotel, where they have no idea what happens outside. decades. They'll put in pudina and onion on top of the. So I mean, there could be pudina chutney served with the kebab separately, but not in a roll.
But not in a roll. So roll was
Not in a roll.
a dry affair.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, just as I mean, the theory is that vada pav sort of gave employment to unemployed Maharashtrian youth, and all the vada pav sort of spread this thing. So in the 70s and 80s, like the roll shops spread across Calcutta, and again, it was like manned by young folks, who are without unemployment and stuff. So every para, which is every locality, every mohalla, had a roll shop, and that is something which the parents would trust. So my mom trusted a roll shop, which is just down our house. It was, I mean, almost like where our complex ended outside.
Where did you stay then?
We stayed at Basdoni in Tollygunge, which now I believe everyone knows. At that time, no one did. So, so there were two brothers who worked in an office canteen, and they came back and they opened it at 4:30. And so I would come back from school. I was go home, change this thing, and I'd come out with my 1 rupee 50 or whatever, and I'd place my order for the egg roll. And that's the thing that while we all talk of mutton and chicken, and in fact, we were told not to have mutton because you didn't know if it was dog meat or whatnot, therefore chicken. But the fact is that on a regular basis, egg roll is what people used to have in the 70s, 80s, or even 90s.
It was more affordable mutton, also, no?
Yes. So it was affordable, and they would, I would be there, and they would start, with the one guy with the paraffin thing would be setting up the stove. The other guy would be slicing, onion, this thing, and then they would take this lump of dalda and put it on the pan, and it would become oil. And one guy would be making dough, and I would be like, oh, and then finally they would flatten it, and I would be like Nimki when I'm taking the wet food can out, and then break the egg on it and stuff, onion. Sometimes there'll be cucumber. In fact, my first egg roll had potato also in it in Dakuya. Then nimbu. Then red sauce, which we thought was tomato, then yellowish sauce, which we thought was chili, roll it up and have it. And if they did chicken or mutton, very few customers, there would be these two stainless steel plates, which would have chicken kosha and mutton kosha. So not kebabs. And it would be like, this thing. And then later when they started making chow mein in the late 90s, that same kosha went into the chicken chow mein, mutton chow mein. But so that's the thing. I mean,
chow mein.
That's the thing about Calcutta, that there's so many, that's a problem with branding. So like roll, Calcutta, kathi roll, mutton, this thing, but that is not the roll we grew up. Egg roll is the one which we grew up. Okay. Then the other brand is Tangra. I mean, there was Changra when we were growing up. Changra is like a, Mawali, like a, but there was not Tangra. Tangra was where the tanneries were there. Okay. So the Chinese restaurants were largely in the area between, Benting Street and Chatni Chowk, where the newspaper offices are, right up to Park Street. So the Videshi Para, where the British were earlier. So that's where the Chinese restaurants were. When I was in college, then there was some talk of a place called Tangra, where some people have opened restaurants and all that. But we would really go to Elgin Road for the momos, which the Tibetans had this thing. So I went to Tangra after I moved out to Bombay, and it was pretty salty stuff. Then I went again with a college friend when I started writing, and it was hideous stuff. And the thing is that by now Tangra has become a place where you go there for cheap alcohol. And imagine the food which comes with cheap alcohol. So I mean that is but it's become like
salty.
But
so that you have more alcohol.
And oil and Tangra has become this big.
Okay, so I'll tell you something. I'll intervene here. My dad was a shippy, and one of the ports that they regularly went to was Calcutta. Diamond Harbour was the port, and she would be there.
We spoke of Diamond Harbour
for like days and days. Okay, so they'd take a tuk-tuk or whatever and come down to eat in Calcutta. So if you wanted to take the girls out or meet the ladies, you went down Park Street and you went to the Blue Fox and places like that, the Sky Room if you were really loaded. And Mocambo. But if you wanted to eat good Chinese food, you went to Tangra. Now, I'm talking about the late 50s and the 60s. Okay? So at that time, Tangra was good Chinese food. And my father talked about this place called Lily's Kitchen, which was the go-to place in those days. It was basically a large tannery warehouse building, which had been converted into a restaurant. So it had, space on top and wide open and lots of tables and stuff like that. And I don't even know if there was ever a Lily, but it was Lily's Kitchen. And many years later, when I got married and I went to Calcutta, I asked my in-laws, Ria's cousins, about Tangra, and they said, would you like to go? So I said, yeah. And they made an entire plan and an excursion. And I was like, where is this Tangra that you got to all get all geared up to go? And then they talked about how they hadn't been in many years and whatever. And this is in the late 90s, okay? And we went to Lily's Kitchen. I had a nice meal. I won't deny that. But I'd been spoiled by Bombay Chinese by then. Nanking, Kowloon, Hong Kong, all of those.
Because those places were run by people who were first or second generation immigrants, the Bombay places. While the Calcutta Chinese were like 4 generations down. So it's as Iranian as Parsi food is Iranian,
I remember Purna telling me about the most famous Chinese chili sauces.
From Pao Chung and all that.
Yeah, and Pao Chung, etc. used to be available in Bombay also. And Bombay Chinese restaurants use them. So that was the link.
Yeah.
And I remember laughing my guts out when I found out that Pao Chung's secret ingredient to thicken his sauce was mashed potatoes.
So it's you can't escape potatoes and starch. And so then I wanted to tell you about this other street food sort of thing in Calcutta, and where there's a bit of similarity with Parsi and Irani cafe fare, which is again and that really came out in the paras from the cabin restaurants. So all these para roll shops would also have chops. So they would have, and now we are not talking of cuts of meat when we are talking of chops and cutlets. So chops for these croquets, there would be mutton, chicken, and then vegetable. Vegetable would be beetroot and potato and fish. Yes, and so the chops are round and what you would call patties, and cutlets were flat. And then there was a patties also, which was like a maida envelope with some sort of dust inside, and which was the chicken patty. So you're crunching into it, and many layers of filo pastry sort of stuff. So sometimes I would save money, like you would save money, and for the chop. And then when I was in college, we'd put the vegetable chop in the things like that. And then later, when I came to Bombay and I married a Parsi, and Kainas would get stuff from Belgaum, ghee depot and all that. Then I saw your patties and cutlets. But they're different. Like it's the lacy batter, it's softer, more potato. But what is the common link in this? Is it British or is it Portuguese? Because I had croquets in Spain, and they're supposed to be more.
Definitely more British than Portuguese.
Because in England, there's not that much of a croquet culture like it is in Spain and Portugal.
These are adaptations in India, and we adapted to doing what we had. And making things. So covering things in potatoes and then deep frying them was a very, very well-known thing, even in British kitchens. So a lot of this, the British don't make any longer. And for example, the word cutlet in Britain means a lamb chop.
Yeah, and a chop
over here is minced up meat or fish or chicken or whatever with other things bound.
And chop to Parsis and Punjabis means a mutton chop, the cut.
Yeah.
But for us, it's the croquet or.
So we call it chap actually, not chop. So it's the mutton chop, and even that is cooked in a spicy garam masala gravy, allowed to cool, and then wrapped up with potatoes, egg and breadcrumb dipped, and then deep fried. And you keep the rib intact, so you can pick it up from the rib and eat it. So it's convenience food in some ways.
Yeah. So you're saying it's a bit of an adaptation of.
So it's a bit of an adaptation. See, there are cutlets, as they're called, all over Persia also, and they're very similar to the cutlet that we eat. The Parsis eat. So I actually wondered originally there, but then I was told that nay, even the Persian cutlet is something that has come over time and evolved even in these regions. So probably connections with Europe and things like that,
And yet the formats are different, because if you see the Parsi one is either made at home, the cutlet as well as the kebab is either made at home or served in weddings or in cafes, which are this thing. But the Calcutta chops and cutlets were largely in the street. So, they were made at 4 o'clock in the evening. See, and that's the other thing about rolls. In Calcutta, it's a snack. It's not a lunch or dinner. So anyway, the cutlets or chops and all that would be
Yeah, you can't get a
fried.
roll in Calcutta in the morning.
No,
I'm told
at
now
night.
you can. But it's not. It is something in the evening. It's evening food.
And chops and all that you can also get in the street shops a bit. But I'm saying it's fried at one batch, say 4 in the evening or something, and till stock lasts at 8 or 9. And it has some element of non-veg, and in the Calcutta humidity, no fridge and whatever, it's just kept on the road. So a lot of deep frying needs to kill all the, germs inside.
Again,
right?
Kalyan, that tells you about the recent nature of these events. Because oil was horribly expensive till about as recently as 100 years ago.
Okay.
And most people farmed their own oil seed. You weren't growing oil seed for large scale consumption. So deep frying was something that was, was brought in during the colonial era in a big way. Till then, only rich people could afford deep fried.
And now the rich people have air fried. So now the rich people have air fried.
And that's a Chinese invention, the air fryer, by the way. Never mind that. So deep frying was something that was reserved for very special occasions. You didn't just deep fry, And that is one of the natures of the vada pav, the samosa, the bhajia. I forgot the roadside bhajia walas of Bombay. So the fact that you were eating these deep fried delicacies.
So the aloo chop in Calcutta, similar to the bhajia and the peyaji. It's all deep fried.
Yeah. The fun thing was that by deep frying it hot on the spot, number one, it was hot. So it felt nice to eat something warm. Number two, there was a little bit of leeway in the parents' eyes that because it was fried fresh on the stove. So don't buy the cold ones. You never know what flies have sit on them and things like that. And what dust from the road has fallen. But you buy the deep fried hot ones and they come out fresh.
It's also funny. I mean, maybe that makes sense because if you see, England is a cold country, and they like sandwiches, which is like room temperature or cold. While India, being a hot country, we like things which are hot, like garam, That's funny, isn't it? And I must tell you about movie theaters. So you were talking about the Mumbai movie theater things. So Calcutta had two sorts of movie theater thing, and again the para and downtown difference. So the parar movie theaters where there would be the Hindi films, and there would be one theater which would do Bengali in the 80s or 90s. Like the thing, rest would be like Mithun, Amitabh, Govinda, and whatnot. So what would happen is that when interval would happen, then this thing and it opens out, and then you go down, and there is one snack counter which is inside the theater which is selling chips and cashews. Cashews were like very, very expensive and very small and popcorn. And then they open the door with the gate and you stay down this thing. And there's a place where you wait outside the theater where the black marketers would sell tickets and all that. So over there would be these guys who would set up roll shops, patties and all that. And they would fry, they would start frying it like, 5 minutes before the thing.
So they had an inside guy who would tell them.
Yeah. And then, so it was almost like a canteen which was attached to it. And then and then they would disappear. So if you would come in the evening past the theater, you would not get it, only at that time. And then you show your ticket and go in.
Kalyan, there were guys like this in Bombay. But with the first terrorist attacks in Bombay, every single theater was told that there would be no going out and back in between the show. So
I understand.
In early days, there used to be actually a cardboard pass. So if you had taken a ticket, he'd give you a cardboard pass to go out and do your thing and come back. The intervals will be decently long, about 15 minutes or so. Then the interval got squeezed down to some 5-7 minutes, and the guys inside would be mobbed because there'd be nowhere to go. And smoking was allowed in theaters. So everybody would be lighting up, on the way out of the theater into the foyer. People would already have a cigarette in the mouth, lighter in the hand. And the moment we came out, somebody be pushing and say, "Chalo," because somebody or the other was,
They were full jostle. No social distancing, no.
And I still remember when I went to Gujarat, and I was blown away. This was in the 90s. People were smoking in the theater.
Yeah, even in Calcutta.
So no, in Bombay you did not smoke in the theater.
In Calcutta you smoke in the theater?
No.
No. In
Calcutta, there was a big board and there were BE rules.
No. In Calcutta,
Bombay something department.
They do smoke in the theater.
Rules,
Achha, so
WBD
then
rules,
there was
no
this other
smoking.
theater culture in Calcutta, movie theater, which was just 3, 4 English theaters and Newmarket, so Globe, Tiger, Jamuna, New Empire, and stuff, and they had bars inside, right? So
Ooh.
yeah, so they had bars inside, and with khana and everything like beer, this, that, and whatever. So you could go before the movie and have your this thing tipple and then go in, or in between, and I guess it's taking in from the old European culture where inside theaters where plays happen, there's like food and this thing. So Calcutta would have the bars. I don't know if they're still there, but you would sort of if you're going in a group of friends, or even if you're going on a date, you sort of knock down a couple of things and then go in. And then it didn't really matter what movie was showing.
No,
So
but I've never seen that in Bombay. And damn, I've never been to a theater in Calcutta which did this. If I'd known there were theaters like this,
no, so
I
see,
would have mobbed them.
Globe is shut down. Jamuna has become a movie theater. Chaplin, I think they reopened. I don't know if it's still there. New Empire is still there, so I don't know if they have their bar still, but they have barista and Domino's and whatnot inside. Then who else? Metro. So yeah, but that was
Have
the
you
thing.
realized something? All the large cities had theaters with similar names.
Names
New
like
Empire,
Regal,
Excelsior,
even
Regal,
Delhi, yeah,
Metro, Victory,
yeah, Liberty.
Liberty.
Mm.
And very often they were owned by the same people.
So Kurush, now I was thinking that when you see a lot of food writing nowadays, unfortunately or fortunately, the focus seems to be a lot on the history and origin and all of that, and very less of the sort of thing which you're doing now, which is real life personal experiences. And then there are a lot of debates about when did this come, and did Mumtaz Mahal make the Mughlai paratha, or was it Wajid Ali Shah who made it, and all that sort of stuff. But I'm saying what I find very interesting is that there were so many people who came to India and left. The Portuguese, the Dutch, the British. I mean, before that, there were the Turks and the Mongols, or some of them sort of stayed back. And there's a saying in Hindi that Angrez chale gaye, magar isko chhod ke gaye. But if we sort of extend that, I mean, Angrez chhod gaye, chale gaye, but mutton chop ko de gaye, fish chop ko de gaye, cutlet ko de gaye. It's
What about the fish fry? You haven't
yeah.
spoken about that amazing act of slicing fish so thin that it's almost not there.
In fact, that is where that's what my rant today is going to be. I have a big problem with home chefs doing Bengali food, street food especially, and I have a big problem. And it in fact started with this place called in Calcutta. Forgetting the place where we go nowadays to eat. Bailum, it's a shop which also has a canteen. And I had the mutton chop, and I said, "What nonsense is this?" And then the home chefs do it and all that. And I'll tell you what the big problem is: the home chefs are completely ruining the name of Calcutta street food, because when they make mutton chop, when they make fish chop, when they have chicken chop, I mean, it's outrageous. But they actually put mutton in it. They put chicken in it. They put fish in it. This is just not done. Because if you've grown up in Calcutta, you know that the fish chop is just potato. The prawn chop will have potato and one tiny shrimp in it. The patties which I was talking of. So if you would have the chicken patties, it would be like layers and layers of maida, this thing. And when it runs to it, there would be a brown colored powder.
Somewhere in the center.
Yes. So fish chop would be expensive because you would still see a few white strands of fish. Okay. But chicken would chop, cutlet, mutton cutlet, they would all be like a mashed thing inside. And the fact is that the fish or the mutton or this thing was like modern molecular gastronomy. It was the essence of mutton. It was the essence of fish. And it was the honest sweat of the brow of the roll shop guy making it. And these people are completely throwing our tradition away by putting stuff in it, putting actual fish, actual chicken. I mean, there's certain things which you can't fool around with, guys. Street food is sacred. And street food
So,
has to be fried in oil which has been used again and again.
of course,
You can't, I mean, do air fried
you have to
samosas. I
have,
mean,
what are they called? What happens to oil when you use it again and again?
rancid.
No, no, not rancid. That whole thing that they're now health conscious about. Whatever it does.
Trans fat.
Trans fat, trans fat.
But
Trans fat was
it,
a good taste.
but listen, isn't trance good? I mean, that's what all the young people say. Like then trance music and all that. Or I don't know if trance is also old fashioned now.
Let me
But
tell
guys,
you, there used to be a theater in Bombay called Novelty.
I know.
It was a very, very popular theater in Grant Road. And it was a very good theater, AC and fancy and all that. Of course, around the corner from it was Minerva, which was known as the pride of Maharashtra, which was the first Hindi film theater with 70 mm and stereophonic Dolby surround sound.
Yes.
Okay? So 70 mm was a big thing in my days. I mean, I missed those screens. These multiplex screens are like
I know.
Yeah, they're like
you can't imagine like Amitabh Bachchan coming down, after interval and like.
And even if you're in the front row, then you're actually watching the movie like this.
No, like this.
Yeah, or like this, up and down. But that aside, outside Novelty Cinema was a very, very famous kebab wala. Now, these are Parsi kebab. These are Indian kebabs. On the
West not kebab, not kebab.
No, but they're not kebabs as in the Sikh kebabs. They're little fried kebabs. Goli kebab, they were called.
The cocktail kebabs, like they call nowadays.
And they were sold by the kilo. So he had a weighing pan and he had a large tub next to him and a scoop. And he'd scoop them out and you'd tell him you wanted 100 grams, 50 grams, 200 grams, half a kilo. And he'd scoop them out and they were continuously being fried fresh in the back. And they were the bomb. Okay, they were bay. They were these little crunchy balls of meaty, flavorful, spicy onion, green chili burst, and all of that. And you got them in a cone. He'd put them in a paper cone and he'd give them to you. So they were the ultimate street food, and he was the only guy who did it. And then I had eaten this when I was growing up. I sneaked to eat this because this was Ghoranu goes. So this was horse meat. Why there would be horse meat, I don't know. My grandfather firmly believed horses who lost at the races on Sunday turned into keema pav in Irani restaurants. Okay. So the Calcutta had the cat dog craze, Bombay had the horse meat craze. So it was definitely beef. There was no two ways about it. At that price, he couldn't afford to give us mutton. But
it's like the tikya rolls outside Jamuna and Calcutta.
Delicious, and we knew we were eating beef and we were cool with it. Then, when I was about 17 and I was doing all the shopping for my mother, we had a keema machine that died at home. Okay, and we were doing 20-25 kilos of keema. It's mutton means for you guys. So I told my mutton wala that I needed to get keema made. And he said, Saheb, we'll have to go quickly because the keema machine is in the beef market and it's only till 8 o'clock in the morning that he does mutton keema, after which he does beef keema.
So that there's no touch contact.
So there's no touch. So the beef can come in later. And the machines were genuinely very cleanly kept. Even though the beef market was, you had to be a very brave person to go there. Okay, it was really badly off. So, so we went there and we'd go and get keema regularly. One day, we were a little late. So we went racing to get keema and he was just washing out the machine with hot water. And he complained and bitterly and said, I will come now. And, we're getting ready for this thing. And so we said, sorry. It was 1 rupee a kilo to get your keema done. So I said, 2 rupees, but just give me my keema. Okay, as it is, he would call people in the beginning and say, look at this Babaji. He buys shoulder meat and gets keema made out of it. Not the bits and parts. Babaji was very proud of that. That we use the meaty bits to get keema, not the stomach and the things like that. So standing next to me was a guy with a very, very large bucket of something white and slimy and slippery looking. So after he got a keema, I asked my guy who was with me, I said, Salim? So Salim said, wait, come here, Baba, watch this. So this guy took out basically tripe, beautifully clean, washed tripe, and put it in the keema machine. So the tripe went, so there would be a big hole wala keema machine and a small hole. So it's called bada and barik. Okay. So you put it through this first and then you put it through that to get fine keema. So you put it through the first and there was this whitish, grayish looking mass coming out. And I was like, okay, this is like really weird. And then from the bottom of the bucket, after he'd gone through all of it through the bada machine, he took out a large piece of something that looked dark maroon colored. And my man, of course, whispered into my ear that this was a spleen. It was a cow spleen. Okay. And very
I've seen
bloody.
goat spleen. Yeah.
So very bloody big slab. It's quickly cut into 4 or 5 strips. And when the keema was put into the small machine to get it minced finely, as the keema went in, bits of this were thrown in with it. What came out of the other end of the keema machine was a beautiful pink, luscious beef mince. I was like, what the hell? And it looked like a beautiful beef mince. I was like, wow, I'm never going to buy beef mince in my life again. I was joking, going out, and he said, Papa, tumne khaya hai kya kabhi? I was like, over my dead body, I've eaten mince that's made like this. Like I wouldn't know it. He said, तुमने novelty का kebab कभी नहीं खाया? Novelty के बाहर का? ये उसके लिए तो बन रहा है. So he'd buy 40 kilos of this keema every day, it seems.
But listen, now tripe and all is like, I remember Pratik Sadhu, when he was creating something for Krug, and we went to Jaipur together, we reached out to you because one of his recipes needed tripe. So, okay, I'm going to wrap this up now in 3 minutes, because otherwise, I won't be able to figure that. See, I'm the producer, editor, everything. So, and I'm also a bit hungry. So I've lost track of what we're talking about. So I'm not sure if I can sum up and say, what did we learn today? I think one thing which you definitely learned is that don't expect a structured flow in a conversation. 2 is that, all this Atmanirbhar and insularism and all of that, and eat local and all that is fine. But please remember that when you are tom-tomming a lot of local food, there are stories of travel, history, nomads, war, and conquests in that. Yeah. But what I would say is that don't get too lost in that. When we were growing up, there was no internet. I know it's hard to believe. There were no blogs. There were only 1 or 2 newspaper columns, and they would normally, write about champagnes and truffles and all of that on food. So when I was growing up, then the biryani was only in Calcutta was about sustenance, is something which, as college goers, was the first time we could go to a restaurant with your own money to a sit-down restaurant and eat, and that aloo would make sure that it was money's worth, because the meat would be pretty inedible. We hadn't even heard of Nawad Wajid Adisha. I'm sure he was a lovely person, but don't get too lost in the past. And I know I've got an archaeologist with me. Enjoy the moment, and if you order Calcutta street food from a home chef, and they put mutton in mutton, chicken in chicken, fish in fish, please send it back and say it's not authentic. Like we did with the mustard restaurant, which made mutton rolls. And that was a practical thing of this thing, because they had overstuffed it with mutton to justify a price. So where Kainaz, who's an outsider but loves rolls, and we had the same comment, and we gave that feedback and they worked on it, is that there's a balance. I mean, there's a reason why they would put 1 seek of mutton into a paratha, and not too much. You can't stuff. You can't stuff things. Yes.
I remember Busy Bee.
Okay, Kurush, whatever you remember, you have to say in 30 seconds.
So I remember Busy Bee used to write about food every now and then. And of course, Shobha Day would write a good column on food. So really? I'm going to end with her. Yeah, very good column on food. I'm going to end with one of her famous lines in that column, which was, food is food, wine is wine, but dhokla is dhokla.
Dhokla is dhokla, and dhopir chop is dhopir chop, and that's Kalyan Karmakar and Kurush Dalal. In case you don't know us, Kalyan's in red, and this is a t-shirt my wife has bought me. Current mood, lying on the tummy, and that's how I'll edit it. Kurush is in purple, and I think we will be back with another episode.
Yes,
and,
I think we're having too much fun.
Yes. So listen, do the stuff. Share it, like it, subscribe it.
Yes, tell your moms and please like, love, share,
and tell your moms about it, because the main audience
about it. Say 20 things, make comments, tell us we are wrong.
Because the main audience seems to be moms, like my mom-in-law, my mom, and stuff. So that's our target, demographic. And with that, bye, Kurush. Bye, guys.
See you guys again next week.
Bye, guys. Stay stuff, and if you have a chop or cutlet in Calcutta, or the patties, remember me. Bye.